Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to go through the process of painting a miniature with you guys. And this is not just any miniature, this is going to be the trophy for the upcoming Dragon Cup. The Dragon Cup is a single elimination tack tournament that the US Tack Association puts on every year, and the main prize is a giant imaginary trophy. This year I wanted to do something a little bit different, so what I did is, asked my wife for a favor. I had her come up with a design, and she actually came up with 5 different designs. And I picked one for this year, and I actually went ahead and picked one for next year. So I'm really happy with what she came up with, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they are received by the community both this year and next year. I'm not a professional. We can just leave it at that. I'm not a professional miniature painter. And so what I do is I just muck around with it until I get something that I'm happy with, slap a coat of varnish on it, call it a good day. And you don't need to be a professional either. Start with a basic set of acrylic paints, some cheap brushes, and if you really want to get into it deep, start with a cheap airbrush. With that, you'll have all you need to start putting painted miniatures on the table. So with that intro spiel out of the way, let's take you through the process of painting the Dragon Cup. Enjoy. Okay, to get started, I printed out the Dragon Cup, and whoop, look at that. Supports let go, didn't turn out right. So here we go again. And this one turned out much better. Soak it in some hot water after rinsing with alcohol, and that lets the supports come off much easier. So I'll let you guys listen to that little wonderful sound there. And then I'm going to speed this up, just like I'm going to speed a lot of this video up. This whole process, including printing and everything, if we discount the extra print, let's say 4 hours for the printing and cleanup, and another 3.5 hours for the paint job. So looking at a decent chunk of a day here, and don't want you guys to have to sit through 8 hours of filming. So let's get some 10x speed going for a lot of this. And here you can see how it looks coming out of the vat after the supports have been removed. Now I'm going to clean up any nubs that are going to be on the finished surfaces here, using a diamond file for some, and then switching over to some sandpaper a little bit later. Just trying to get all those surfaces clean. Since this is a miniature, any of those nubs will look extremely out of place. They'll be amplified. Some quick cleanup, and then now I'm going to prime it. My preferred method is to use a black primer and kind of go all the way around, and then just a couple spritzes of a white primer, and that gives it this zenithal highlighting, so kind of mimics how the light would be hitting the object. Okay, now I'm going to start airbrushing. I am by no means a professional with the airbrush. This is a $25 airbrush that I got last year, so I've only used it a few times. I start with some purple on the wings and kind of focusing more on the structure of the wings and not the membranes. Then I'm going to switch over to this green-yellow mixture here, and then spray that in between on the webbing. I've chosen to go with a split complementary color scheme here, so the violet on the one side along with kind of a teal or an indigo, and then on the other side the color wheel, the complementary side, bringing in that green and yellow, that green-yellow mixture. Here it is after all the green. And now we're going to switch and start painting the cup. So I wanted to go with kind of like a very light clay, very light terracotta. Not white like china, but also not as dingy brown as straight terracotta. So I went with this paint called Ancient Bones. And that's another thing. I'm using a cheap airbrush, and I'm also using just a beginner set of paints. So I like to think that this is pretty accessible for those of you guys watching. Now for some brown for the floorboards. You can see there I made a little bit of an overspray mistake, but we'll fix it. After my colors are blocked out, I headed inside to do some brush work. So I'm deciding on my exact mixture of yellow-green here, and then I'm going through and I'm deepening the color on those wing webs. Also, just in general, going to use this as a base coat for the dragon's skin. And then we'll come back in later and add some highlighting and some other kind of complementary colors to it. Painting is kind of like being at the lathe. For me, it's a very relaxing process, although I do find it a little more stressful than being at the lathe. Something about the scale of the object that I'm working on and having to really concentrate and hold my hand steady to get those lines how I want them makes it a little bit more stressful than turning wood. Get our cup set up. After that, I'm going to deepen the purple on the structure of the wings, on the bones and the scales and things there. Sit and stare at the model for a little bit. Make sure I'm on the right track, see where I want to go next. And next is going to be making the tack pieces. So I'm just going with a classic black and white. I thought about doing wood tone here, but I went for the more contrasty black and white. And then you'll see later I'll add some metallic to make the capstone pop. The 3D model that I used did not have much texturing on the webbing of the wings, so what I decided to do was add that texture in just visually. I used a highlight shade of my green-yellow curved lines on the webbing in the wings, just to kind of add some depth and some interest to those. Next, coming back with some highlights here, a little bit lighter shade of that purple, and bringing in some of that blue, that teal color here. After that, I blocked in the bath bubbles. And then I went with a turquoise here as a dry brush highlight. So dry brushing is putting a very small amount of paint on the brush and then just letting the bristles hit the highest points. So it's really great for highlighting, in this case scales, but anything that physically has a texture over the recesses where the brush will just hit the high points and leave that paint only there, so your recesses stay the previous color, stay nice and dark. And now for some manual highlights on the dragon skin, switching to kind of less green and more yellow. And now I'm going to make a metallic. So what you saw me use there was just an acrylic medium, and this is mica powder. This is the same powder you would use when coloring resin. And what I'm going to do here is just mix it straight in with that acrylic medium. And the acrylic medium, you can really think of it as old-timey white Elmer's glue. So it's going to look white, you're going to mix your pigment in there, but it's going to dry clear. And my paint set did not have a metallic bronze, so I went through my mica powders, found a bronze that I liked the color of, and made my own. You can also add this to existing acrylic paint, so it doesn't have to be to a blank medium or a clear medium. You could add bronze highlights to a black or a yellow or some other base color. In here I'm going to make that capstone metallic, and then I'm going to use that same metallic throughout the model to tie other things together. So the horns on the top of the dragon's head, as well as any of the kind of bony protuberances on its wings. So the wing tips, kind of the wing, what I would think of as the knuckle joints, I guess. Anywhere where I could find a spiky enough place that it looked like some metallic would do well there. Alright, now it's time for some touch-up. So various colors here, just making sure my lines are straight on those tack pieces. And then I'll do the same for other colors, just kind of going around. Filling in the eyes. Hitting some highlight details, just making another level of highlights, making it even brighter, but covering a smaller area so that it kind of gradually builds up from the base layer to the mid-tone on up to the highlight, and then on up to, in some places, straight white on the very tips of things. I'm using a shadow wash, which is just a very dilute paint, kind of the opposite of what you would do for a dry brush highlight. The wash sinks down into the crevices, and then you can use a somewhat clean brush to soak up anything that is left on the high points. And so I used it to accentuate those gaps in the floorboards. Another quick dry brush for some highlighting on the tail that's overhanging the edge of the cup and on the kind of the rim of the mug or the cup that the dragon is sitting in. That's my general approach for working with these models here, is just to do a step, move on to something else, and then go back and do another step, but with a finer brush, and just kind of not trying to get it all in one, but working at the end having something that I'm happy with. And you may notice that I went back and added more detail afterwards. So what I did was I let the model sit for a day and let the acrylic dry so I could see what the final color would be, just to make sure I was happy with it. And then I went back and added a few more details. I added some veining in the wings and just some highlight details, cleaned up the eyes a little bit, just to make sure that everything was ready to be finished. That way I could put a seal coat on it and call it done. I want to thank you guys for watching. And if you want to support me further, you can buy my book. Wow, words are hard today. If you would like to support me further, you can buy my books. You can take a look at my Patreon, but more than anything, I just want you guys to get involved in the TAC community if abstract board games are your thing. And if not, and you're here for the crafting, then I want you to go out. I want you guys to craft something and have some fun with it. And as always, I'll leave you with some glamour shots of our project today. Thanks, guys.